Okay. So what I intend to do this lesson is outlined as shown, and here we go. Factorising two terms into a single bracket. I'm hoping this will be fairly straightforward, but it's something we're going to use in the harder questions later. So a sort of question we'd have is something like this. Okay, and you would factorise that by taking out, I'll show you next. That's what we're going to do is factorise. I'll show you when we come to it. We're going to solve an equation, so we'll solve an equation. So we've got the same sort of expression as that shown above, okay? But on this occasion, we are going to have it equal to 0, okay? The second, or should I say the third bullet point there, is factorising a quadratic expression. Now, we've done some of these previously, but previously, this value of a was just 1. We never ever showed it, but what we're going to end up doing today is factorising expressions such as this. And if we notice that value of a is bigger than 1. And when we do that successfully, hopefully then we'll go on and solve equations where we might have that expression and we would have it equal to 0. So we would factorise that expression there, place it equal to 0 and then continue, but I'll show you as we go through. Okay, let's start with what I consider to be the easier work, and I say we'll be using this skill in the harder factorising. Okay. I should mention the work on factorising. It could appear in Unit 1 or Unit 2 of Maths or Numeracy. Okay, so expanding a bracket is just multiplying that out as shown. I've mentioned this previously. 3 lots of 4x is 12x, 3 lots of 5 is 15. But we are factorising, okay? So there are two terms here, 12x plus 20. We've got to look for the highest common factor of 12x and 20. Now, 1 goes into 12 and 20, 2 does, and 4 does. 4 is the highest common factor. So what we do is place 4 outside of the bracket here. Then we ask ourselves, and some people do this by division, but you take your preference. What would you multiply 4 by to give you 12x? I would multiply 4 by 3x. So 3x is the first term inside the bracket. And then for the second term, we would say, what would we multiply that for by to give you 20? And you multiply it by 5. So what you do here is write plus 5. Sometimes it will be a negative 5. Now, obviously, if you multiply that out, you'll have 12x plus 20. You should do that check, okay? But that is our answer. That simple two-term expression is factorised, okay? So I should mention throughout this video, you can pause it at any time, replay certain parts of it, and then you know, if I'm going too fast, you just pause it and give yourself time. Okay, so there are 5 questions there. I'd like you to factorise those. And when you are complete, you should press play and I'll go on and show you the answers. Okay, so pause the screen and have a go at it. Okay, I won't look at all of these. I'll look at the last 2. The highest common factor of 32 and 48 is 16. So 16 comes outside the bracket. What do you multiply 16 by to give you 32g? You multiply it by 2g. What do you multiply that 16 by to give you a negative 48? It's a negative 3, and then you've got a h on the end. So if I was to multiply that out, 16 times 2g is 32g. 16 times negative 3h is negative 48h. Okay, I'll show you the answers. Okay, so there's all the answers. They're only 1 mark questions on their own. They appear very early on in the paper. But as I said, I wish to use this skill in the harder quadratic factorising. So please mark those off. And we'll move on. So same thing, you've got two terms, but we're not taking a number outside the bracket, we're taking a number and a letter. So what's the highest common factor of 24y squared and 36y? Now, you'll notice that 12 goes into, it's the highest number that goes into 24 and 36. And the letter y, because there's really a y to a 1 there, the letter y appears in both. So I'm taking that smallest index value outside. So 12y is what is going to go outside the bracket down here. Okay, and then I ask myself, what do I multiply 12y by to give me 24y squared? And the answer wouldn't be 2, it would be 2y. So 2y goes in the bracket here. I ask myself, what would I multiply 12y by to give me 36y? And it's just 3. And in this case, I'd have to write plus 3, because on some occasions, you'll have to write minus 3. Okay, so that is a 2 mark question. 1 mark for what's outside and 1 mark for what's inside. Okay, so I'm going to show you 5 questions again. I would like you to pause the screen and try those 5 questions and press play when you're ready to go. Okay, I'll look at the last 2 questions. What is common to 32 and 48 is 16. And the letter G exists on both. So I take the smallest version of G outside. You can write G or you can write G to the 1. It doesn't matter. And then you say, what do you multiply 16G by to give you 32G? And the answer is 2. What do you multiply 16G by to give you negative 48G cubed? I'll write it over here. What do you multiply 16G by to give you a negative 48G cubed? And you would multiply it by a negative 3G squared. So you put this in here. Okay, and if you were to multiply that term out by multiplying that by that, then that by that, you will get the expression shown. Okay, the next question, what is the highest common factor of 34 and 51 is 17. And the letter X appears in both, so I take 17x outside for 1 mark. Then I say, what do I multiply 17x by to give me 34x squared? And the answer is 2x. So you write 2x, first term inside the bracket. What do you multiply 17x by to give me 51x? And the answer is just 3. So I put in plus 3. And that's the answer. Okay. So that's all the answers to the factorising questions I asked you to try. So pause the screen and mark them off. Look for your corrections, if there are any. Okay, now I'm going to move on to factorising quadratics. Now all quadratics have a term ax squared plus bx plus c, And we did this sort of thing. Well, first of all, I'm just going to factorize. Yeah, sorry. Last lesson, I'll refer to last lesson, we solved an equation where we had a quadratic like that, and we had two brackets, and we made them equal to naught, and we had two answers. So we're going to do the same with the factorizing of two terms I've shown here. So if I look at the very last question, when I factorize the expression 34x squared plus 51x, I ended up with that. So that's what I've shown there. Now, you could have a question. It's an equation if there's an equals there. So it's an equals naught. And what you would do is you would factorize that, as we did with question 5 above. And then you're going to have two answers, because you're either saying that 17x, what's outside the bracket, equals naught, in which case x equals naught, or the bracket equals naught. So 2x is -3, so x is a -3 over 2. Okay, now I'm either making that equal to naught, and whatever 17x is times that bracket will give me naught, or I am making that equal to naught, which I've done here, and I end up with the second answer. So I'm going to end up with two answers. Okay, just like we did with the last lesson. Okay, so there are 4 or 5 questions following this. If you want to look at that again, try it, and I'll proceed to show you these questions. There they are. So factorize the expressions on the left, and then make what's outside the bracket equal to naught, and what's inside the bracket equal to naught, and it should produce two values for x. Okay, so pause the screen, give yourself some time to try that. So I'm going to show you all the answers in a moment. I'll have a look at question 5. And if I was to factorize question 5 here, I would take 15, oops, sorry, let's change my pen. I would take 15x outside the bracket, and I'm left with 2 plus 3x. That would get me 2 marks. Okay, so then I proceed to say that either 15x is 0. Let's just create some space here. Either I would go and say 15x equals 0, in which case x is 0, so that's one answer. Or what's inside the bracket, 2 plus 3x equals 0, in which case 3x is equal to a -2, and x is equal to a -2 over 3. So I've got two solutions. Okay, so I'll show you the answers to all of those. There are the solutions to factorizing and solving those equations. Okay. If you need to correct anything, take your time and try and correct them. Definitely pause the screen, but if you're ready to move on, let's have a look at this. We're now going to look at factorising harder quadratics. Now, last lesson, every quadratic I factorised had this a value equal to 1. We never even showed the value of a. What we're going to do now is we're going to work with factorising, and this value of a is greater than 1. Okay. Right, so I've got a typical, I shouldn't have written that down. This is what I would do. I should have written that at this stage, right? We're going to find the factor pairs of 6 because we multiply 3, the value of a, times 2, the value of c, to give me 6. So we multiply a times b to give us a product. That's the product. Okay, so we multiply the 3 by the 2 to give us 6. So we need all the factor pairs that multiply to give you 6. And then we need the total. We need to select right. So we multiply the 3 by the 2 to give you 6. So we need the factor pairs of 6. And then we need a total of what is in the center. The total b is in the center. Okay. Let's tidy that up a bit. Okay, so it doesn't matter. So I want the factor pairs equal to 6, and then I want the total. Okay, so the factor pairs of 6 are 1 times 6, and they total to 7, and the other factor pair is 2 times 3. We can often get that, but if that number 6 is an even number, we can halve it and double that. Otherwise, you will have to go through and write all the factor pairs down by whichever means necessary. Okay, the total of these are 5. So that is the factor pair I'm going to use. Okay, so we replace the 7x. We replace the 7x with 1x and 6x, or the other way around. So here goes. 3x squared is the first term. I'm replacing 7x with plus 1x plus 6x, or plus 6x plus 1x, but make sure you do write down a sign in front of them, and then plus 2. So that 3 terms is turned into 4 terms. Then we factorise the first pair of terms, hence I was showing you the work at the beginning of the lesson. We factorise these two, we take an x outside, and we're left with 3x plus 1. Okay, now whatever you write in that bracket must be written over here, 3x plus 1. And then we ask ourselves, what do we multiply 1 by, this 1, to give us 2? And the answer is 2. So make sure you write plus 2 there, not just 2. And what we do then is we combine that and that, the 2 terms outside the brackets, to give us x plus 2. And then let me just highlight this. What is inside that bracket and that bracket is always the same. and we write that down as our second bracket. So you have completely factorized that quadratic expression. Okay, I'm going to do a second question. If you want to replay that, just replay the video. The second question. You must find the product. You must multiply the 2 by the 12, and 2 times 12 is 24. So we need factor pairs. We need factor pairs of 24, two numbers that multiply you to give you 24. And then we need a total of 11, this middle value. So you multiply the 2 by the 12 to give you 24. And we will need factor pairs of 24. And we find the total. We need the factor pair that totals to give us 11. So we need the factor pairs and we need the total. Okay, so the factor pairs of 24 start with 1 times 24. You may start differently to myself. I'm able to halve 24 to give a whole number, so I'm going to go with this, 2. So I double, sorry, 12, so I double the 1. I can halve that to give a whole number, to give me 6, so I double the 1 to give me 4. I can halve that to give me 3, and I double the 4 to give me 8. Okay, it doesn't pick up all the factors, however it does on this occasion. You should often check to see if 3 divides into something, or 5 or 10. But I believe I've got all the factor pairs of 24. I'm going to ignore a negative times a negative at the moment. That's coming up in the final part of the lesson. Okay, so the total of these is 25. The total here is 14. The total is 10, and the total is 11. We want the total of 11, what is in the center there. So I'm going to write out, I'm going to write 2x squared plus, and I'm going to write down plus 8x plus 3x, or the other way around. So I've replaced 11x with plus 8x plus 3x. There. So I've got 4 terms. So I'm going to factorize the first 2, which is why I did all that work at the beginning of the lesson. So I take x outside. In actual fact, I take 2x outside, and I'm left with x plus 4. Okay, so whatever I write in that bracket, I write over here, x plus 4. And then I ask myself, what do I multiply 4 by to give me 12? I multiply it by 3, so I must write plus 3. It's not acceptable to just write 3. And then I combine these two to create the first bracket. And then the second bracket, these are always the same, so they create the second bracket. Okay, so that is our solution. Okay, and you could check it by multiplying it out, possibly using the FOIL method, and you should get the quadratic expression there. Okay, so I've shown you 2 examples. There's positive values for the factor pairs. We'll look at negative values after this exercise. So I'd like you to try exercise D. If you want to run through these again first before trying exercise D, please rewind the video. So there's 4 questions there. Pause the screen, do your best. Okay, I'll just look at the very last question here. Okay, so I multiply the 7 by the 2 to give me 14. So I need the factor pairs of 14. And I want them to add to give me 9. So the factor pairs of 14 are 1 times 14. I can halve that to give me 7, 2 times 7. And I believe those are all the numbers that divide into 14. Now you can see that 1 and 14 total to 15, 2 and 7 total to 9, which is what we wish to use. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite that 7x squared plus, instead of 9x, I'm going to write down plus 2x plus 7x. I'm going to factorize the first two terms. I take an x outside and left with 7x plus 2. I must write the bracket exactly the same over here, 7x plus 2. And I ask myself, what do I multiply by 2 to get plus 2? And the answer is plus 1. So these first two terms, or the terms outside the bracket, are x plus 1. And the terms that match the two brackets are 7x plus 2. Okay, so that is our solution. Okay, now you might have written the bracket the other way around. You might have said 7x plus 2 and x plus 1. And that is how I've shown the answer down here. That comes about, if you've written the bracket the other way around, it comes about because instead of saying plus 2x and 7x, you probably said plus 7x plus 2x. So you get the brackets the other way around in the solution, but they are both correct. Okay. So mark those off now. Pause the screen, go over something again if you need to. They are easier with all positive values. We're going to look at negative values next. I'll move on. We're going to look at negative factor pairs. So this is a typical example. Now, minus x means minus 1x. Okay. So I want factor pairs 3 times a negative 2, factor pairs that give me a minus 6. I multiplied the plus 3 by the negative 2 to give me minus 6. I want them to total to give me minus 1. So I'm going to draw this out. The factor pairs and the total. So the factor pairs of minus 6 are 2 times minus 3. In actual fact, I won't start off with that one because that is the solution. I'll say 1 times minus 6 and then minus 1 times 6. We can halve that to give me 3 and double that to give me a 2, and then swap the signs around so we can have plus 2 times a negative 3. Now they all multiply to give me negative 6. If I look at the totals, that's a negative 5, that's a positive 5, that's a positive 1, and that's a negative 1. Okay, so that is what we're going to use because we want that center value to be negative 1. Okay, so I'm going to write it out like this, 3x squared, and instead of minus 1x, I'm put in plus 2x minus 3x. And of course, you could write that the other way around. You could say minus 3x plus 2x, but I'll go with this. So I factorize the first two terms, and I end up taking x outside, and I'm left with 3x plus 2. So I must write that exactly the same over here, 3x plus 2. And then I ask myself, what do I multiply this plus 2 by to give me negative 2? And it's a negative 1, okay? What do I multiply plus 2 by to give me a negative 2? And it's a negative 1. Okay, so the usual thing then, negative 1. These two terms outside the brackets form that, and then the two brackets should be equal. I have factorized that expression, okay? So it gets a lot harder when you've got negative values to deal with. Okay, so if you want to play that again, do so. I'm going to show you 4 or 5 questions. There they are. Something to watch out for. If I want the factor pairs of, no, sorry, just nothing else to say. Have a go at those questions. Pause the screen. Okay, I'm going to show you the answers. Yeah, I will. This value I've changed, or rather, should I say that question I've changed. So I'll write down 4x squared minus 11x plus 6. Okay, if you try that one before I show you the answer to it. Okay, I'll just I'll focus on this question because there's a little bit of difficulty with this question. People often miss this out. So the value should, let me just move all these answers down. So make sure you try this question before I show you. We need a product of 4 times 6 is 24. The factor pairs are minus 11, should total to minus 11. Okay, so I want a product of factor pairs equal to 24, and I want a total equal to minus 11. So the obvious ones are 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 4 times 6, 8 times 3, but they all add up to 25, 14, 10, and 11. So they haven't given me the minus 11. So it's something to do with this last one here. And what you should consider is that minus 8 times minus 3 gives you a total of minus 11, but they give you the total, they give you a product of 24. So this is what we should be using, okay? So I'll fill it in. 4x squared, and instead of negative 11x, I'm going to replace it with minus 8x, minus 3x, or the other way around. Okay, so I factorize the first two terms. I'm left with 4x outside. I'm left with x minus 2 inside. X minus 2 inside the bracket there. What do I multiply minus 2 by to give me plus 6? And the answer is a negative 3. So the two terms outside the bracket are 4x minus 3, and then the two brackets are x minus 2. So that is something to watch out for. A minus times a minus times a minus gives you the plus 24, but they total up to give you a negative 11. Okay, so those are all the answers. Okay, so pause the screen if you need to. And finally, we're going to look at quadratic equations. So all I'm going to do is make them equal to 0. Okay. Yeah, make them equal to 0. Now, I have just factorized that expression for you, and it ended up with those two terms there. Okay, so I'm going to take that a stage further. If the question you were given was an equation like this, so it was equal to 0, stage 1, you factorize the expression by doing everything I've shown you just a minute ago. But just like we did last lesson, that produces two answers. So I say either 4x minus 3 equals 0, in which case 4x is a positive 3, x is a positive 3/4, 3/4. That's one answer. Or the other bracket, x minus 2 equals 0, in which case x equals plus 2. Okay, so it's a very small step at the end. Factorizing is the hard work. Once you've got the two brackets, it's quite straightforward, and I showed it last lesson as well as earlier this lesson. So there are a number of questions I'd like you to try. There they are. Okay, I would say watch out for this and this because of what I've just shown you. I won't say more than that. Okay, so do your best to try to factorize those. Okay, so we'll look at the last question. Okay. 3x squared minus 7x plus 4. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to give us 12, but they need to add to give us minus 7. So I'm going to look at the factor pairs. Factor pairs need to multiply to give you 12, but they need to total up to give us this minus 7 in the middle. Okay, so 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 4 times 3. Now obviously 4 times 3 gave us plus 7, so obviously you need minus 4 times minus 3. They multiply to give you plus 12, but they add to give you minus 7. So that is what we want. So I'm going to replace negative 7x, with a negative 4x and a negative 3x. So we've got 3x squared minus 4x minus 3x plus 4. Factorize the first two terms, put an x outside, I'm left with 3x minus 4. I write the same in that bracket, 3x minus 4. What do I multiply minus 4 by to give me plus 4 is a minus 1. So the first two the terms outside the brackets are x minus 1. The terms inside the brackets above are 3x minus 4. So I factorised the expression. Okay. Now, what I should say then is, well, let's sort of double check that they do multiply out to give us the expression above, but the question had an equals naught in it, so I'm just going to say equals naught there, and I'm going to say one answer is x minus 1 equals naught, so x equals 1. That is one answer. The other bracket is 3x minus 4 equals naught, so we end up with x is 4 over 3. Okay, so I'm going to project the answers for all the questions below. There they are. You take your time and try and get to those same answers. Pause the screen if you need to. And that brings it to a conclusion. So I'll just give you a brief summary. So there's many types of factorising questions. What we haven't done yet is factorising quadratics using a formula. The formula that's shown on the front page of your exam paper. That's for the future. We haven't formed quadratic equations from drawings or texts and then gone on to solve them like I've solved the equations above. So that's for the future, but the next live lesson is a recap of the 3 lessons I've shown to date, and I'm going to show you some exam questions similar to the ones I did in the lessons, and we'll run through them during that 40-minute session. Okay, so bye for now, everyone.